We're going to go ahead and get started here. So welcome everybody. My name is Liana Salama. I am Vice President of Marketing for the International Housewares Association. And I am delighted to be able to bring Tom Mirabile to all of you today to present what would have been his keynote address at the 2020 Inspired Home Show. A couple housekeeping notes. So this webinar will be recorded and it will be made available on the inspiredhomeshow.com website. So you can kind of sit back and relax and know that you'll have full access to the content after the fact. Second, related to Q&A. So if you mouse over your Zoom platform, you'll see a little button there that says Q&A. You can use that to ask questions anytime during the session, and I will be collecting them in the background. And once Tom is done with his presentation, then I will rejoin and we'll go through the Q&A portion. So I would like to introduce all of you, for those of you who do not know Tom Mirabile. Tom is principal and founder of Springboard Futures. He also serves as the global consumer trend forecaster for the International Housewares Association and is a contributing editor for Pantone. His emphasis on consumer-centric product development and generational relevance has guided the evolution and creative direction of some of the most well-respected brands and retailers in home and housewares. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, Tom's company, Springboard Futures, has worked with the IHA and independently to provide essential consumer trend insight and design trend guidance to retailers and manufacturers across the home and housewares industry. So thank you for that, Tom. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'll be back for Q&A.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to we got a lot to cover in a short time, so I am going to just jump right in. Apologies in advance for the hair, but barbers still haven't opened up here, so sorry, you're stuck with it. You're stuck with it just like me. Let me share my screen with you. Okay. So let Leanna know if there are any issues about what you're seeing, please. With that, we're just going to get started. So, sorry, just let me minimize this really quickly. Okay. So this presentation is, it was initially titled 2020 Vision, focusing on the now and, to envision the next normal. We have adjusted it from the keynote to take into account a lot of what's been going on, but that said, looking ahead to the future, I've never been really comfortable. I think a lot of futurists and forecasters, it's very hard to latch onto certain things. So we've really tried to stay with numbers and stay with things that we know are fairly predictable. So the result is something that Leanna and I are both really comfortable with in the IHA. The sort of route we're going to take is this. Oops, sorry, I should be doing this slide, so shouldn't I? We're going to take this as the route we're going to take is we're going to map the road to 2030. We're going to start off with generational insights because I like to always get people on the same page. What is the need to know of each generation? We're going to look at what each generation is going to look like in 2030. And then we're going to ask sort of a big question that we want people to think about to really sort of move your business forward. We're also going to talk a little bit about the multi-generational home. New challenges that the multi-generational home creates, the fact that COVID has certainly moved that forward, and some of the fresh opportunities that it's created for us and our industry. And also, as we say at Springboard all the time, shift happens, core changes in the value equation. We've seen some really important changes in what consumers value and how to build that into product and what that means, and some examples of some people who are doing a terrific job at it. So like I said, we're going to start off with some consumer snapshots and look at each generation and see sort of where they are. Let's start off looking at millennials and Gen X. So millennials, 24 to 39 years old, 72 million of them. They're 22% of the population, 31% of average household spending. About 37% of them own a home. And millennials last year eclipsed all other generations, including boomers, for home purchases. So that's very good for our industry. 63% of them rent their home, and they've been defined by technology. They are known for urbanism, bringing life and vitality and culture back into cities. When we look at Gen X, 40 to 55 million, I'm sorry, 65 million, 40 to 55 years old, 20% of the population, about 25% of average household spending. 59% of them own a home because a lot of them are in their family stages right now, with the most number of children living at home. 41% of them rent. They are really defined by the recession. And we're not talking about this recession that we're kind of living through right now. We're talking about 2008. They lost a lot of their 401k, their retirement funds in that. They're just recouping that. And they're also known for balance. A lot of times millennials get credit for work-life balance, but it's really Gen X that started putting that into action. Then we look at boomers. 56 to 74 years old, 71 million. This is the first year that boomers have been eclipsed in population by millennials. They're 22% of the population, just under, 36% of average household spending. 72% of them own a home, and a lot of those homes are by and large paid off, so that it increases their disposable income. 28% of them rent a home, but we are seeing rentals increase in this generation because we're really seeing boomers put a lot of value on quality of life and time. So for a lot of them, they think, I don't want to mow the lawn anymore. All the things that go with caring for a house, so to speak, are things that some of them are considering leaving behind. They were really defined by affluence. They're a very affluent generation, and they're known for suburbanism, for really building the suburbs and bringing culture and retail and commerce out to the suburbs. And then we look at seniors, 28 million, 75 and over, and they are about 8% of the population, 8% of average spending. 79% of them own a home, many of them outright, and 21% rent. They were really defined by the first recession. They are in general thought of as fairly frugal. And for our purposes, we won't be talking about them a lot because only about 3% of their discretionary spend goes into home and housewares. A lot of that money that they would spend on that, they help their boomer kids and their Gen X kids, you make those decisions and make those investments. I also wanted to talk about Gen Z, an enormous generation, 91 million people. They're 12 to 24 years old right now. So a lot of the household spending figures and home ownership aren't really showing up in here yet. But they are very important influencers. The same way that millennials, who are now coming into their own financially, influenced older generations, reverse mentored sort of Gen X and boomers, Gen Z is just as influential. You'll see some of the figures associated with that. They are defined by social media. They're digital from birth, and they are known for their mobility. Anything can happen in any space. It's one of the things that makes them so flexible and so, so adaptive. This is just something, and just for the record, you're all going to have access to this presentation, so please feel free to relax because you don't have to take notes. I'm going to send this to anybody who requests it. But I always like, this is a full year. It's was put out by Statista, and it's a full year of what happens in an internet minute. Now, granted, there have been some fluctuations in that, especially in YouTube and Twitter, but take a look, and Netflix certainly, but take a look at how people are spending their time. And as we go through the generations, and you'll see some statistics about how much time is spent online, it's really interesting. You should be bumping your product and your line up against this and saying, based on the generation I'm speaking to, what are the right ways to speak to them? What are the mediums that they're listening to? So I always like to include this in my presentations every year. So let's talk about Gen Z first. What's the need to know with this generation? Well, they're the most racially diverse generation, and they're on track to be the most educated. Just 52% of them are in the last census define themselves as white, Caucasian, so very, very diverse. Consumption is focused on access to products and services, not ownership. So when we think about Uber, Netflix, things like that, where they don't look to own because the home space that they imagine is not a large one. And also they like the flexibility of not owning things. When they do shop, 68% of them say that a wide variety of choice is important, is an important factor in deciding where they shop. But we are seeing a shift in Gen Z towards more traditional lifestyles. That is, they have they're very big on tech real life balance. They have strong relationships with their parents. And they aspire to home ownership more, in fact, than millennials do. So that's, again, good news for us. Teens in this generation now enjoy more than 5.5 hours of leisure a day. And the biggest chunk of that is spent on screen, 3 hours and 4 minutes on average. So when you look at the last slide, you can sort of start figuring out where that goes. For each generation, we wanted to put in we've gotten some great information from McKinsey. We wanted to put it in here, not as meaningful for this generation, but still, when you look at household income versus household spending, this is, where do you expect your spending to go over the next couple of weeks? So what we see in black is a slight reduction, reduce slightly, reduce a lot, about the same as gray, and increase slightly, increase a lot. So we're seeing with Gen Z, what you're seeing here is the average of all generations, okay? We're seeing that Gen Z is actually planning on big reductions in spending over the next couple of weeks. It's kind of a surprise. When we look at household spending, again, these figures for this generation aren't particularly accurate, but I've given you links to the McKinsey. They update it every 2 weeks, and this is current as of last week. So we'll be updating it again next week. What else do we need to know about Gen Z? Well, they make decisions in a very analytical and pragmatic way. They analyze very readily online. They compare products very readily. They are brand participants, which means that whatever your brand is, whether your brand is a retailer or an actual, like a manufacturing brand, they want to participate. They want to give you feedback, and they want to tell you what they want out of your brand. They demand responsible behavior, and that's something that is going to get more and more important. We're going to look at that in a minute. And 93% of their parents say that Gen Z influences their family spending on household purchases. This is an incredibly high number. So that means that whenever Gen Z parents want to purchase something for their house, that has to do with their household. If it's a significant purchase, they talk to their kids about it, and whether it's food or whether it's electronics, certainly. So it's important to keep that in mind. I thought this was interesting to share. This is from Pew Research, updated May 14th. But it's the amount of time that teens in this generation, this is 13 to 17-year-olds, how much time they spend online. 45% of them say that they're online almost constantly. And surprisingly, 85% say 85% of that time is spent on YouTube. 72 or 85% say it's on YouTube, 72% say they spend it on Instagram, and 69% on Snapchat, and then we see downwards from there. This is absolutely having an effect on what their parents watch as well. So it's important to understand, if you're trying to communicate with consumers, these are some of the places that you need to be, depending on who you're trying to talk to. Then we go into 2030 realities. So let's look at Gen Z in 2030. So they're not kids anymore. They're 22 to 33 years old. And when we look at that, in 2030, we predict that consumption is going to be inseparable from ethical concerns. Because right now, in 2019, last year, there was a survey done by Pew, and basically what they found was that this number of people, 65% of Gen Z, said that the manufacturers or retailers' position on social or environmental issues, both social and environmental, are going to affect their spend. So we can really expect that by 2030, the consumer is going to make buying decisions based on social, ethical, and environmental impact. Moreover, social media will put them in a position to judge other consumers by these standards as well. Because transparency isn't just about consumers and the brands that they buy from or corporations. Transparency is also about transparency with other consumers. We're going to see that growing. So that mandate for transparency is all inclusive. It means materials, human resources, production, life cycle, end of life scenarios. All of it matters. So, and the reason why we say this is to look ahead and start planning now on how you're going to respond to these inquiries, because they're important to this generation. When we look at how do you prepare for 2030? Well, how will ethical and the question we ask, and it's just a question we encourage everybody to ask inside their own organizations, how will ethical and responsible materials be used in product design without aesthetic or functional compromise? I love the book Design and Social Impact, put out by the Smithsonian, and when we define responsible design, and it's important to sort of get a common language, but the four streams of integrated sustainability, as defined by the AIGA, are environmental protection, social equity, economic health, and cultural vitality and preservation. Um, it's important to look at all of these and see which and how you're responding to in your company and in your brand. Let's talk about millennials. What's the need to know? So over 40% of millennials are parents. They're more likely to stay loyal to a retailer because of loyalty and rewards programs than any other generation is. The average millennial in America is $42,000 in debt, and that stands up against $38,000 for the average American. So they're slightly above the average debt. It's important that only 16% of that debt is in student loans. And there's an important message in here, because a lot of people, if you say, oh, millennial debt, everybody says, oh, it's school debt. Well, it's not. It's only 16% of it. A lot of it is lifestyle debt. Frankly, millennials really, they're experience junkies, and they love experiences. They love challenging themselves to new things all the time, and there is a cost to that. So there's been a debt build since school for that. And also the older part of 40% of them are parents. And, you know, so there are a lot of reasons, but it's important that we stop thinking of the millennials as just having student debt. 75% of them worry about their finances often, and 39% say they're chronically stressed about it. So again, this is a Pew survey. I apologize for not crediting that. When we look at spending over the next 2 weeks and what is expected, and again, this is COVID related, certainly, but when we look at household income, on average, 39% of households say they're going to reduce slightly to reduce a lot. 51% of millennials say that they're going to reduce. 11, on the other hand, at the other end of the spectrum, 11% say that they're going to increase their spendings, their household income slightly. So we're seeing big reductions in this generation in anticipated household income. When we look at millennials on the household spending, we see a commensurate drop in household spending, again, against a 46% reduction in household spending. More need to know about millennials. First-time buyers are on average about 32 years old. They make about $72,000 a year. 58% are married. 60% have no children. Just 57% of home buyers in 2019 were married, compared with 75% in 1985. So it's a big drop. We're seeing a lot of cohabitation without marriage. And while they redefine mobility, surprisingly, millennials are saying that they want to stay in their homes longer. And this is pre-COVID. They want to stay in their home an average of 10 years versus the national average of only 7.5 years. 63% of them say they have regrets about purchasing their current home because they see, and again, this is a pre-COVID figure. So we have, you know, they feel the debt, load. Obviously, that's the main reason why they're saying that. So when we look at 2030 realities for millennials, in 2030, realities are going to be between 33 and 53 years old. They're going to be the largest age cohort in the United States. That is between 35 and 39. And they're going to be entering their prime income generating and their prime spending years. So it's important that we keep an eye on what their needs are. By 2030, it was predicted that over 40% of the American workforce was going to be working from home in America alone in 2030. That trend is in hyperdrive now. According to Gallup last week, approximately 60% of American workers prefer to work remotely as much as possible, even when public health restrictions are lifted. That's going to create a tremendous number of restrictions on space. We're going to see really strong, we'll be doing webinars on this later on, what the opportunities it creates, but a lot of space issues here. And we can also anticipate that with what's gone on with Google and with Facebook and I'm forgetting somebody, Apple even, we know that the reduction in people being forced to go back to work is going to have a ripple effect out across businesses of every size. It's starting in tech and big business, but we can expect a trickle down with that. So that's going to mean more and more people working at home. By 2030, an estimated 80% of millennials will have children. Right now, they're at about 42%, okay? But by 2030, 80%. What's that going to do to a home when we're all in there and you're working there? Space considerations are our ultimate right now. So when we prep for 2030, and when we look at understanding millennials' preference for work-life integration, although we say that right now we're looking at millennials probably really wanting more work-life separation, how will the home and housewares industry design evolve, both functionally and materially? And we're looking at a couple of things here where I love this this dining table on the left, and all of the pictures that you see in here, most of them have links. Product from IKEA, these like collapsible home office spaces, you know, and I love this dining table. I don't know what you do if you had kids, you'd have to put them on the top drawer, but I think it's terrific. So let's look at Gen X. They're now in their prime earning years, okay? They're, which is between 45 and 55 in the US. They produce 31% of total US income, despite the fact that they are only 25% of the population. Sorry, my typo there. They're the most likely to respond to personalized offers, especially ones that are based on purchases they've made previously. They care less about engaging with brands online, but they do it when there is an incentive to do that. And about half of them are financially supporting both a parent and a child. So this is where we are with Gen X. They've still got kids at home. About 50% of them are financially supporting both a parent and a child. And what that means is that we've got to make sure that we check off as many boxes as possible in the value equation. When we look at household income for May 18th to 24th, we see that, you know, there's a fair balance. Gen X is really standing up pretty close to the general population. At 40% say that they expect a slight reduction in income to a drastic reduction. 50% say they expect no change at all. When we look at household spending, again, Gen X is sort of smack dab in the middle. They're matching up with the national averages for their expectations on income and spending for the next 2 weeks. Which, by the way, is a very good thing, because we've seen really ridiculous spikes in savings rates. You know, so and this gives us an indication that the saving rates that we're seeing, which I believe a couple of weeks ago were up at around 31%. They were record high savings rates. A lot of it is just creating pent up demand that people are anticipating spending, and hopefully that'll lead us to a V-shaped recovery. So when we look at 2030, now Gen X is now 54 to 63 years old. They are going to fuel the rapid growth of multi-generational homes as their parents age, but they're still healthy. So you're not going to put them in assisted living probably. They're still a valuable part of the household, and children are living with them longer for economic reasons. We can anticipate a demand for flexibility, for space savings, making modularity and multifunction primary value drivers. And understand, Gen X's wealth is expected to more than triple between 2015 and 2030. So it's already started, but as their boomer parents pass on, they're moving from 11 trillion to 37 trillion. So they're not always going to be, you know, that poor middle generation. They're going to have money to spend, and they're going to want solutions to do that. One of the things that, so when we look at preparing for that crowded house of activities, how will design meet the demands for personal space and flexible transformation? On the right, I don't know how well you can see it, but on the right, Lennar was the first, and I know people have done it since, but Lennar is the nation's largest home builder, and they came up with a model called the Next Gen. The idea behind the house was what you see in blue is a separate sort of, we used to call them mother-in-law suites, but it's a separate place to have to have kids live when they come back home. And then some people were talking about, okay, well, as we get older, the kids will move in here with their family, and the parents will move in here. What's interesting about this is it's become a source of income and is being treated as a separate rentable space for Airbnb and other purposes, as a separate space to generate income. So really, really smart. We also, this company in Outside does prefab studios. The other thing is, imagine, God forbid, but imagine we look at a recurrence of COVID-19 10 years down the road, say. Having prefab separate spaces would allow certain care to be happening at home, because again, in 2030, we're going to have older generations at home, and we're not going to want to necessarily keep them in a hospital all the time or things like that. But this idea of prefab studios that sit in your backyard and create a separate space for entertainment, for parties, for everything else, things that you don't want to have necessarily in your home is really brilliant. When we look at baby boomers, so what's the need to know? They control more than 2/3 of disposable income in the US right now. So they're certainly not somebody we want to ignore. They stand to inherit $10 trillion over a 12-year period through the 2030s. Over the next 18 years, this is important, spending by people over 50 will increase 58%, while spending with those aged 25 to 50 will only grow by half that, less than half, 24%. So again, this is an important generation to stay in touch with. They do have a decreased interest in buying objects. They don't want more things. They're really focused on quality of life, length of life, health and wellness, ways to spend time with their family. So it's important to focus your efforts on what we have here. Objects have to deliver the lifestyle that they want to live, as opposed to just being another can opener. And instead of aging in place, a growing percentage are abandoning homeownership and renting. That's what we talked about before. They make up 47% of all pet spending. I don't know why I just put it in here because I couldn't believe it. I was so surprised. But then again, I do spend a lot on my pets. So when we look at household income, again, May 18th to 24th, you see that far less boomers say that they're going to be reducing or reduce slightly or reducing a lot their household income. 71% say they're going to stay the same. By the same token, not a lot are going to increase it either. So you've got a lot of people just staying stable in here. When we look at spending, however, they've got a nice healthy chunk of spending. 41% are going to spend. 19% say that they're going to increase their spending. And probably because they're seeing, the bargains coming down the pike, and their saving situations are somewhat more secure than other generations because of the investments and the lower debt ratios. So let's look at 2030. Boomers are now aged 64 to 84. I don't even want to think about it. 20% of households will be are currently headed by somebody 65 years or older, okay? But in 2035, 35% will be headed by somebody 65 years or older. So, and that's why I put this over here. What we're going to be looking at, frankly, is a broad degeneration that's going to affect communication, perception, interaction, and if unless technology comes through, it's going to diminish quality of life for a very large cohort. Common gestural models, like the things that we think of today, finger taps, drags, pinches, that's not going to be sufficient for this generation when dealing with small electronics. But happily, interactive technologies are evolving right now that are very multimodal. So in other words, if my dad just says, bah, the TV knows that means this is crap, change the channel, whereas for somebody else in my family, it might mean the, right-hand swipe of a hand or something like that. They will be able to give separate gestural languages and motion languages for every member of the family. And that's really going to help people expand. They expand to meet the needs of, and be more responsive and reactive and perceptive and proactive. So the question really turns into, in this new era of multimodal, hyper-flexible device user communication, what are some products and services that can be transformed by this? What are products and services that can be created to increase and maintain health and wellness? Because we know boomers are about, it used to be just about aging in place in terms of a home. Now it's safe aging in place in the age that we are right now. The next segment, only a couple of slides, but we thought it was really important to talk about the multi-generational home, because not only was it important pre-COVID, but post-COVID, it's still going to be important. We've gotten very comfortable with it. We are very clear on what the issues are. And basically, prolonged health and vitality is going to collide with financial pressures and force the growth of multi-generational homes in America. As of the 2018, which was the last full census, 20% of Americans lived in multi-generational households. It's going to be interesting to see this year what that turns into once the census is complete and we see those results next year, end of the year. Income demands mean helping adult children as well as grandchildren and aging parents. 13% of all 2019 home buyers purchased a multi-generational home. So many people are looking to the future of that. And 29% of new shoppers plan to include a guest suite option in their next home, which is like a bedroom, a small living area, and a kitchenette. So what problems, what are the things that the problems, the solutions, the opportunities in here? What do we love about the multi-generational home? Well, it's the whole family every day. It's just like the holidays. What do we hate? It's the whole family every day, just like the holidays. So what happened to privacy? What happened to personal space? What kinds of products can we create to re-deliver that, to re-engage? There are more people to help out on the plus side, but there are more people to make a mess, and there's definitely more clutter. There's more sharing, which means less buying. Take that as good or bad as you will, but the opportunity comes in a single object has to function across varied capabilities, both mental and physical, because you've got generations that have varied physical capabilities and tolerances. Shared experiences we love, but divergent interests mean that we're fighting over channels, we're fighting over different things that we want to do. And we've all had a taste of that over the last few months. So it should make us all really in sync with what we want to look at. A friend of mine, Susan Yashinsky, said this to me once, and I was so blown away by it that I put it as a headline here. She's with Sphere Trending, and I just love her. Differences define American consumers, but desires unite them. And what that means is if we look across the landscape of all the different generations, what matters to all consumers? So yes, okay, we just pointed out a whole bunch of things that really make generations very, very different. But what matters to everybody? The answer right now is intangibles. Because what today's consumers value most, what's most important in the value equation for many people is not even visible. Let me give you an example. When we look at various surveys, Pew, McKinsey, other very Hartman, we start seeing the same things come up. What do people want more of? I want more time. I want more space. I want more health and wellness. I want flexibility. I want sustainability and convenience and experience. So what I want to do really quickly is to just do a flyby. And again, you'll have links to all this of some of the people who have really been doing a good job of designing the intangibles for their brands. So when we say, okay, how do you design time? Okay, well, some great examples. iRobot, of course, their new WinBot. And it's not just about the fact that you can clean your windows without having to do it yourself. Imagine the part of it that involves taking danger out of it. Nest, smart thermostats, security, and envirosensors. It started as one device, but the convenience made it spread into other things. Automatic pan stirrers, the Atomi smart Wi-Fi coffee maker. And all of these make the time savings of all these settings just go away. Space savings. I wrote this when Royal owned FlexPad. It was at CES, and since then Samsung has bought it. But this idea of a tablet to save space, it's a tablet you can literally stick in a breast pocket. Portable kitchen. This is a really amazing little suitcase that carries a whole kitchen, including a convection top in a small portable piece. So you don't have to have your kitchen out all the time. You can see it on Dezeen. Collapsible portable cups. I love some of these. Okay, I would fall down the stairs and kill myself, but this Object Élevé, it's a beautifully integrated desk, stairway, storage, bookcase. You've got shoes on there. I mean, don't go looking for something in the fridge in the middle of the night. Something that's a little bit more my speed is this is a convertible piece. It's designed by Portapresso in Italy, and it's 4 pieces of furniture at least in one really wonderful piece. But this idea of space savings is going to become more and more important. Health and wellness. You've all seen the Mirror Home Gym. This is actually a link to an article that from Technofrolic, which I think you'll really like. The Jupiter mattress, this, millions of smart skills, this allergy sensor that is an amazing item that I wish that I'd had before, but it detects food allergies. Glop Studios herb grower lamps. So we're seeing a combination of functions that we've seen before. Again, Product Hunt Future Kitchen. This is a click-through article. You can just jump to the Milo Smart Blender. All of these have links so you can take a look at them. This Delos Darman Home Wellness Intelligence Platform, amazing. Just click through and take a look at it. We also want flexibility. This is a modular kitchen concept. So the idea is that if you have a lot of frozen, or you put together a modular kitchen that makes sense for you and what you buy more. This table that is everything from a speaker to a charger to a place to sit to a place to charge your phone. Modularity is showing up in furniture, Samsung Cube refrigerator, Quirky Porter, this multi-purpose barbecue prep and serve tray. These are all things that are space solutions, multifunction solutions. When we look at safety, of course, safety is incredibly important, but the people who have really stepped out and ahead of the crowd, Master has done an amazing job of integrating technology, so that integrating app with technology, so you can really see what's going on your phone at any time. And even this wasn't created by Sharper Image, but this food freshness and safety detector. So as we get more and more suspicious and more dependent on security in our own home, and depending on ourselves for safety, because we can't clearly in many cases depend on other people, products like this really deliver. Sustainability and responsibility, there are just too many great products to talk about. Nomi is it's a speaker made entirely out of plastic waste, but very colorful. Of course, Skittle straw, you've seen loads and loads of straws. Last swabs, reusable swab, probably the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life, but hey, some people like it. I just can't even imagine washing up a swab every day. And a lot of times the solutions aren't even about product. This company, Knife Aid, is a professional sharpening service. You send your knives in, and they sharpen them, professional quality sharpening and cleaning, and send them back to you. So sometimes it's a service rather than a product that we can look in. We look at convenience, of course. I have to talk about Prep Deck because I absolutely love it. And again, for small spaces, it's amazing. It's a mobile convertible prep station. You can see it here, but click through and see the videos. It's amazing. This went on Indiegogo with a stretch goal of 250,000, and it got funded for 860,000. And of course, a smart company picked it up. But one of the things I don't want to underestimate is, we should be looking at crowdsourcing sites. There are some amazing ideas out there. La Fonction mobile workstation. I put this in pre-COVID, but I'll tell you, it's an amazing thing. And of course, Gourmet's 3-in-1 breakfast station as well. Wonder Key, holds up to 20 keys. Again, this was a Kickstarter item. Samsung's new dual oven, 2 dishes, different temperatures, same exact amount of space. This Tonu bin, it seals and changes its own bags. This coffee table that integrates Bluetooth speakers, a refrigerator. So now really you don't even have to get up from the coffee table. You can eat there and you can just stay there for the rest of the night. Experiences, when we talk about designing experiences, it's everything from, the Equa bottle, which again, just an amazing bottle that reminds you on your phone when to drink, how much you've drunk today, things like that, to high-speed smart toasters that let each member of the family specify how they like their toast specifically, or of course you can. And I just want to say something about, this was an amazing link. Dezeen did a video about Dyson, who had a student challenge about designing, designing new eco-sensitive products. This is the student that won. She designed a transparent, fast biodegrading film from fish scales, and it doesn't even smell. So, I've made my point. Self-sustaining door handles, identity and status. Of course, we're always looking for things that up the ante in terms of design. Clearly, one of the directives is that it's got to be functional. Function is extremely important right now. So that's kind of where we are. But I'm gonna sort of share my screen right now. But if any of you need to contact us, feel free. The number's right here. I'm gonna leave that up for a second, and I'm going to just turn my video back on. so you don't have to see me talking like an Italian the whole time. And that's it.
Thanks, Tom. So first off, I just wanted to comment that as a, as a Gen Xer myself, I'm pretty excited about that inherited wealth that's coming my way, that 11 trillion to 37 trillion. So that's
I'm excited about where it all comes.
that made my day right there. So thank you for that. Couple questions that have come in from folks on the webinar. First one, is related to, I think, just kind of how do you, we had an idea of what consumer wants and needs were, and then COVID happened and they start evolving, and they're going to continue to evolve, pandemic, earthquakes, anything, can make a change. How do you stay in touch with what consumers want as it evolves?
Well, obviously, I hope people will come to Springboard. We provide a lot of that sort of critical information on Springboard, and you can subscribe for free at springboardfutures.com. We've been working with a lot of retailers and wholesalers of sort of every size to try to make sure that they have the information that they need to go back into business and to sort of manage change and to make decisions, by category, which makes sense. But feel free to give us a call, 1-808 802 for future. It says 808 here. That's wrong. It's 1-802 for future, and we'd be happy to talk to you and give you advice or see what we can send you.
Excellent. One question related to the concept of a new normal. So talk to us about, a new normal, and I think it's specifically referencing the new normal coming out of COVID, right? What kind of changes do you think are permanent with consumers coming out of this, and what are kind of going to spike and then, kind of go back down again?
Well, I guess I would say, first and foremost, when you look at data, try to stay sensible about it. And I'm not trying to push Springboard, but we really do try to help people look at decisions they make and make sensible ones, because there are certain categories, small electrics, for example. And Joe Derechowski from NPD does some amazing, you can find them on the IHA site. Oh, I sound like a salesman today.
Yeah.
On the IHA site, Joe Derechowski does a great job of saying small electrics. Here's an example of, okay, bread makers, like you jump into bread makers because you see a big spike, but it was a temporary thing, and they were able to tell us it's not going to last forever. So really look into the category that you're thinking of, making extreme purchasing decisions in. The other part of it is sort of when one of the things that's really going to show up over the next couple of weeks is what people are going back to and what they're going to keep. And we're all like sort of biting our nails waiting to see, how our consumers going to react. But there's been a lot of talk about, the new normal, and really, honestly, there is no new normal. Okay. There isn't. There is the next normal. There is maybe the now normal. But normal right now can be a week. Normal can last a week. We are very adaptive, and human beings are adaptive. It's why we've been able to survive this, frankly. And so when we, I think, we really look at normal and say, okay, this normal may only last a week. Is it enough time to act on? And it's important when you're looking at the new normal, well, new normal doesn't mean it's going to last forever. It doesn't mean that this is what we tend to think of in terms of normal. You make big investments in, well, that's the new normal. You've really got to be careful. You've really got to do your homework.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's interesting, Tom, as you and I have worked together, is in talking about some of those things that consumers need and some of those, those needs and desires that, we identified together, and, you've got some more on here too. I think what's interesting is in a lot of ways, those needs are consistent. It's the kind of interpretation of them that changes, right? So space, for example, we were already having a lot of conversations about needing to do more with the space you have because of multi-generational houses, because of, reurbanization, and empty nesters, fleeing to the city. But now, now there's an added layer to that space conversation that is about, okay, now I got to have a home office and a place for my kids to do their school and a place for, where I'm not going to be bothered. And it's the same concept. It's just kind of a different, a different spin on it.
Yeah, it gets a little bit more specific, but I think one of the things that, the keynote that the Market Watch report that we're going to be re-releasing soon, is a these intangibles are a testament to the fact that start with the basics. Really start. There is, how can I put it? At Springboard, we're trying not to even talk about the consumer anymore, because the new ethos is this: it's not about convincing people anymore that you know who they are. We know you, we get you. It's about proving to them that you are who they are. It's speaking in first person. We need this. We feel like this. We feel like that, because COVID-19 has been an incredibly unifying experience. We've never, in human history that any of us have been alive for, including war times, we've never had an experience that we shared so unilaterally.
Mhm.
Mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, kids, we're all literally under the same roof experiencing it at the same time. And that means that there's a great sense of empathy, but that also means that we've got to, that we're conversing more about what we expect. And it's a new world. It's really exciting, but at the same time, it means that we're getting back to the basics of, what do I just want out of my life? I want more time. Just give me more time for my family. And so products that deliver time, there's nothing better. Pew Research had time as being the number one consumer desire, beyond money savings. So that's a big deal.
Which is funny, right? Because again, in some of the work that we've done together, the most recent US Census actually said that people have more free time. They have 5% more free time than in leisure time than they've ever had before. But there's so many different things that can occupy that free time that our perception is that you actually don't, that you have less time, right? Because it's choice paralysis for all the different things you can do with that free time now.
Although I want to be a Gen Z who has like 4 hours a day, I can say I wouldn't be spending it alone. Although I am, so.
I read an interesting article a couple of days ago about, I guess it would be the people who are, about the kids who are just graduating from college right now. And there was this notion of them as being bookended by tragedy, right? They grew up, or they were born and they started their life right, around the September 11th timeframe. And now they're about to go out into the world and, try and get a job and try and, realize earning power during a pandemic. So I think it's interesting to think about how, that will shape their, attitude towards material goods and experiences and everything else as they come out in the world.
I think are really the ones that we're going to see. We're going to see them react financially first, because we're going to feel their reaction first, because they are bookended. I mean, they were just getting into the workforce in 2008. It diminished their entry income, which slowed their income through the progression of their career, and now they're hit by this. So it's we're gonna really have to work at making sure that we deliver value, and that we deliver that the value proposition is really clear. We're giving you this. We know we have a responsibility to give you this. There's got to be a lot of empathy that's going to go into product development and service development as well.
So, speaking, kind of going back to that notion of, what's the new normal and are the short-lived trends versus the long-term, there's a lot of new research and data coming out weekly about, the COVID era. Do you think it's smart to just kind of ignore everything from before March and think about the future? Or you think it's more, that we'll get back to where we were before March?
I mean, look, all of that, the way we lived still serves as foundation and at times aspiration for the ways we're going to live. But that doesn't mean you don't look at the figures. I mean, in a way, I got to tell you, in a way, it almost seems like this was meant to happen. I mean, when we look at, and anybody who wants it, I'll be happy to send them. I was looking at some McKinsey data today, and this was as of the end of last week. The number one thing that consumers said that they were going to do was to do more cooking at home. Okay. And I'm not just making that up because I love housewares. I mean, I will send anybody who wants it. I have the page. But, doesn't it seem like sort of like it kind of led up to this? Like, look at the past 10 years of, competitive cooking, desserts, and then food TV, and then Food Network, and allrecipes.com, and the pervasion of cooking skills that rejoined boomers and Gen Xers and millennials. That has built a foundation that, I mean, not for anything, but if I had to pick an industry to be in right now, it would be the housewares industry.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
and this is one of the ways we get along. It's such a social interaction. It's a way we've gotten used to reconnecting. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to be the one doing it every night. But, you know, when 2008 came, what we saw was after that recession, we saw people investing money, and we were surprised. Remember, we saw people investing money in cookware. We were like, why are cookware sales going up? Well, it's because, yes, my finances are hurting, but since I've got to cook at home, I want to do it with the right stuff. I want to at least give myself that luxury, you know, and that quality. So those things became important, and I think we can expect that again.
Yeah, you mentioned Joe Derchowski earlier. One of the notes he said to me was around coffee makers and around, you know, people who, you know, you would expect that when there's, you know, financial concern that people would have gone out, you know, and bought the lowest end coffee maker. But the fact is that people who were used to going out and spending a lot of money on their coffee every day, they went out and bought a high end coffee maker when Starbucks shut down. So,
Why you got to watch Joe is how long is that going to last?
right.
Like, is that a longer curve? You know, are people going to decide that, or are they deciding it now because they're being proactive and saying
Right.
no?
Right. Question here from the audience. You know, things got interrupted at the busiest time of the year. Seasonally, from a color palette and art design perspective, where do you kind of feel like we are? Or do you have any thoughts about, you know, what kinds of, you know, design trends and color trends are going to be attractive in the, you know, near term?
Okay, so and if if you go to springboardfutures.com, now we've done blogs on that. Sorry, I can't help it. But we've done blogs on that. You're going to see some of the tertiary concerns like purple. You're going to see pull back a little bit. But in general, I'm happy to say that color trends have really been moving in the same direction they were going in. Okay, we are seeing we're seeing blues advance. We knew they were going to because Lee Eisman told us they were going to, but we're seeing a larger spectrum of blues advance. We're seeing lighter chambray blues going forward. We're seeing darker navies, and that's blue is a nature-oriented color. Okay, I made my background blue, but it's those things that, you know, we can expect to continue seeing. There is no color with the possible reduction of red, because there is a slight association with the possible reduction of red or the moving of red to cooler rather than, or rather warmer rather than cooler, more yellow and orangey type of reds. There really has not been significant movement in the way we see colors going.
Yeah. What about in any kind of, you know, aesthetic or design? I mean, you and I were talking, you know, a while back about you were seeing a lot of tribal, you know, type patterns and design coming out. You know, any of those kinds of things that you've.
There are. You're making me seem like a jerk, Nellie. Okay.
Are you going to send everyone to Springboard to go find out about that?
We're doing a series now called COVID resistant trends, and among them, look, it's not rocket science.
I swear I didn't know that before. That was not a plant.
You know, we're seeing certain things that there's going to be a return to sustainable value, not sustainable in the sense, but in that sense, but we're going to see a pulling away, except in accents, of really plastic brash design. We were already seeing a return to classical, okay, and more classical type of design. We're going to see that coming back. You know, in housewares, however, the function is going to be on gestural, sleek design. You know, so I mean, they're two separate things. Really, in functional goods, we want to see gestural objects. We want to see objects that imply how smooth they are, how sleek the experience is, how useful they are, the functions they have. Whereas, and you can see that in the pictures that we presented, in home decor, on the other hand, you're going to see a return to, I don't want to say more traditional, I do want to say things that you look at and you say, you know what, I can live with that in 5 years, because people are going to be looking at durability in terms of design aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I wonder with some of those things too, you know, again, other conversations that we've had that I'll bring up here related to, you know, the onset of being able to rent things for home decor as opposed to committing to things, right? You know, and at what point, when you decide to own something, you know, you go that direction maybe, but then you recognize that there may be an opportunity to rent, you know, different types of decor and aesthetic that you can live like that for a short period of time.
You know, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. I mean, decor for me is a little bit, it's a little bit more iffy when it comes to that. You know, we've seen big declines in Rent the Runway. Well, and mainly because it's like, oh, put that on. It's like, I don't even know who was wearing this, so and who expected that, right? Um, but but I think with certain home products, you worry about damage. I mean, I can't even own something without breaking it. So like, forget renting something and not breaking it.
Yeah.
But when you look at higher ticket items, one of the things that honestly that we can expect, because you're already seeing it happen off, outside of a formalized structure, is you're seeing millennials in my neighborhood, they're like renting and exchanging KitchenAid mixers because they don't want to make that kind of investment.
They're only
Or
going to use it once or twice a year,
them in Q4 who want to bake, and they go in on it together and they buy one as opposed to waiting until they register and getting one each. So I think that we have to, honestly, I think the person who cracks that nut going to make a lot of money, because I think that there is opportunity in there for that.
Yeah. When you talk about, and I'm jumping around a little bit here, but, when you talk about the multi-generational homes, when you think about the purchase process for a multi-generational home, you talked a little bit about designing products that are really, that are functional across generations. Who's making the purchase decisions and who are the influencers in that scenario? Is it still the core, the core household, head of household, the mom, whomever, with influence from grandparents and kids, or?
Generally speaking, and this is completely anecdotal, but I think generally speaking, you can expect the person that has the issue to be making the purchasing decision. I mean, one of the things that I've been seeing is these wall covers that minimize noise. Okay, they're sound baffling wall covers. All right, and it's like, you look at it and you think, wow, I mean, that would be me, because I hear every webinar Bill watches all day long. So it's sort of like, I know I'm going to be making the decision about that. I think where it comes to choice, we look to, reverse mentoring is an interesting thing. We look to younger generations. I don't think we do it for consensus. I don't think the purchaser does it for consensus. I think we go to the person in our environment who is the most likely to be able to compare all the facts. And that, generally speaking, is millennials and Gen Z. I mean, they love research. You heard what we said about Gen Z and variety. They want variety, which encourages everybody to get right with their online platforms. But I think that the people making the decision are always going to be a cross between the person using it and the person that can inform them. Millennials, for years, key influence was never their money until the last few years. It was always their influence, their smart.
You mentioned the kind of the standalone suites that people could put up, in their yards or whatever. Are those the same as the tiny homes, or are those, are they completely different concepts?
No, it's a different concept. It's something that you can literally buy as a separate, as a drop in your backyard thing. The other homes, the Lennar homes, and a lot of similar things that are coming out, like the next gen home, they are a home that you purchase, and it's either pre-built or it's built for you. But they're more sort of housing complex types of things, where you can buy a home and have it built for you, and it'll be built that way. Versus what I love about the separate pieces are you just buy them and drop them in your backyard. And it can be a crafting space, it can be a meditation space, it can be a home gym that's literally a gym on site. And so COVID's really brought up how many people had to go out and just deal with having to work out at home. I mean, I certainly didn't, but I can imagine that for many people, this was an issue, and just even the privacy of that. So having a private space that's a flexible space for the whole family, and, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, my Peloton arrived yesterday. It took 8 weeks because they were so in demand, but yeah. What about the tiny homes? Do you think that's a trend that's going to take off at any point?
I don't know. For me, there's something about it that rings faddish with me. I don't know why, and I don't mean to cut them down. Yeah. There's something about it that, and maybe it's the marketing, that just seems insubstantial. I don't know why, but that's, again, totally my opinion. It's
asking your opinion. Yeah. Last question, because we're at time here. Got a note about back to school. Any thoughts you have on, is that going to be an opportunity this year for retailers, or is that something that is going to be still to kind of wait and see? Any thoughts on that season this year?
I think back to school, we have to look at school as happening in the home environment first. And I think school is going to happen again, okay? Because one of the big numbers that we're seeing, across various resources, is that parents don't feel like their kids are getting as good an education as they get when they're in school. So I think that, honestly, I think it's not going to be so much about different assortments as look at all the data that we're seeing about what's making people feel safe to go back to retail again and apply it to going back to school. People want sanitizer, they want sanitizing stations, so not knowing whether schools are going to have that or to what degree they're going to have it, I'm sure they're going to have it. But all of those concerns, from gloves to masks to, I was just looking at something. I was working with a great group called Licensing International this week, and Leanne Schwarzkopf was showing me a picture of how Warner Brothers, I believe it was, CBS, came out with all of these masks that were SpongeBob SquarePants and all these great licenses, World Wrestling Federation. So I think you have to look at the necessities to keep your kids safe and make sure that you load up on them, and really just, it's about anything that helps you reinforce your kids' desire to do things that we don't even want to do ourselves. Masks are suffocating.
Right, how to make those fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, my kids are. But to your point, people are adaptable. I've been really shocked with how well my kids adjusted to the situation and to the masks and everything else. But yeah, certainly making it fun is a big part of that. And personally, I tend to agree with you. I mean, I think that the economy really can't get going again in earnest until the schools are open, because there's just too, the childcare situation is just too real. And to your point, I mean, second grade math is the hardest thing I've done in a long time. So.
But also there's so much underlying bitterness about, we put all these tax dollars in, we've been shoring up the schools and making sure we have the right education system for years. And now this, so it's like, all of a sudden I'm supposed to be a teacher. Of course not, so that's why I think it won't be tolerated very long. But I think the back to school needs are going to be what they always were, they're probably experts on that, but we'll be able to research it for you if you want.
Well, that's all the questions we've got. And like I said, we're already a couple minutes over time. So I want to thank everybody for staying with us. And as I mentioned, I did see a couple of questions come across about this. This webinar has been recorded and will be uploaded onto our site at theinspiredhomeshow.com. And you should receive a follow-up notification once that is up there it would come from the IHA webinars account that you registered at. So thank you everyone very, very much. And thank you, Tom. Always, always a pleasure.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I can't wait to turn my air conditioner back on, but it was a pleasure.
Yes, you go cool off. Play with your dogs. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.